What's up, guys? Welcome back to Descriptivismo Literary Analysis. Today we're going to be covering the Attack on Titan Lean AU created by Snig. Make sure to leave a like and smash that subscribe button, and let's get on with the video. The story starts off talking about Lean, which foreshadows the way Fandus Fabsbear manages to survive being shot the first time. Lean is a Chekhov's gun in this scenario since its inclusion foreshadows its later use and significance in the story. Not only does this scene introduce Lean to the viewer and conditions them for its later relevance, but Sasha creating a false alarm to gain attention foreshadows when Connie does a similar thing shortly after. Only this time, instead of claiming to see Lean, Connie accuses Fungal of taking part in the Bite of 87. In a sense, Sasha and Connie act as foils of one another. After realizing their lies are negatively impacting their friends, Sasha retracts her statement and apologizes, stopping any further harm. However, Connie ignores what he did and allows Phrases to be shot by our protagonist, initiating a cycle of violence that goes on to destroy the world. Our nameless protagonist is characterized as unhinged and violent, yet sensitive and remorseful. As Connie represents the selfish initiation of barbarity, our protagonist represents the public, an impulsive and easily manipulated yet powerful force who is constantly wavering on their position in any given conflict. They start the story tense and anxious, and all it takes is one person accusing another for them to take action. Once Ferdinand is shot, our entire cast mourns, including, if not especially, those who were responsible for his supposed death. While at the moment it may seem like actual moral progress is being made, and that the characters are expressing grief and remorse, Fangine appears once again. The cast is given a second chance to prove that they can repent and redeem themselves, but Flagel's return uncovers another major theme of the story: fear. The cast, frightened by the sudden appearance of a face they once associated with a heinous and vicious crime, and with that feeling being reinforced by the like-minded and anxious people that surround them, fall back to their old ways and shoot Fiber once again. The author shows us that, alongside greed, mindless fear can easily lead us down a path of evil. This is also when Lean is given a thematic significance. Immediately after foliage appears, a member of the group rushes to distribute Lean among her friends to protect them. Additionally, it's revealed that Fingy utilized Lean to help him survive the first shot from our protagonist. These two events solidify Lean as what can best be described as a clutch, an easy, tempting, and comforting way to relieve anxiety. As absurd as it sounds, Lean in this story is almost implied to be addicting, like a drug of sorts, and represents society's reliance on ignorance and false security to maintain mental stability. And with the introduction of the Spaller, there is a brand new threat to the group. However, it seems our main cast has gotten over their panic-ridden episode by this point, and Connie greets the Spaller with a friendly attitude. However, this arc showcases the disastrous effects of the past on the main character, who has become corrupted and desensitized to sin. These distress-induced acts of brutality have become habitual by the time our protagonist meets the Spaller, and that is evident when they decide to shoot the Spaller on sight. The main character is nameless and has an ambiguous gender identity as a deliberate decision. It represents their moral ambiguity and the uncertainty they feel when they ponder their immoral actions. They're completely split as to their motivation in life and whether their decisions were justified, and this indecision manifests itself in the climax when our protagonist's guilt and regret causes them to split in three and destroys the universe. This is the ultimate result of not only their reckless and destructive lifestyle, but also their friends, who consistently heighten their nervousness and enable their homicides. The protagonist splits into three versions of themselves, which symbolize the three aspects of their personality that clash throughout the course of the story. The version wielding a gun symbolizes their fear. This fear is what drives them to violence and is what makes our protagonist so easily exploited by Connie. This version can be seen manifested in our protagonist during key moments of emotional outbursts, such as when they shoot Pharyngeal Phlegm and when they shoot the Spaller. Interestingly, this version is also the version who realizes that they are in the bad place. Perhaps it's the heightened anxiety, but this aspect of the protagonist's personality seems to have some merit and is not completely ignorant and one-dimensional. While the other two versions are contemplating morality or attempting to escape it, the protagonist's fear is what ultimately makes them aware of the dangerous path they're taking. The version taking estrogen is representative of our protagonist's sensitivity and emotional maturity. They are the introspective and moral aspects of their personality, which is showcased by their questioning of the methods the protagonist is using to deal with their regret. The audience also sees the way this side of our protagonist was created through the first scene we see this version manifested. In this scene, one of our protagonist's friends, instead of feeding into their fear or taking advantage of them to improve their reputation like Connie, actually gives them encouragement. This kind act allows our protagonist to feel enough confidence in their abilities and their emotions to believe they are capable of redemption, which is what creates this sensitive version of our protagonist. The final version is the one walking away, whose symbolism is fairly obvious. This version represents ignorance and escapism and is the version we see by far the least of. This is because, rather than facing their problems and acting within the story, this ignorant side of our protagonist is more content with distancing itself from the conflict, and thus the story as a whole. We only ever see them with their back turned, and they are never manifested within the main character outside of the final scene, unlike the other two. Now, I suppose it's time to tackle the big question that everyone in the Attack on Titan Lean AU fanbase is debating about. What is the deal with McCreek? He appears for just one incredibly short scene and says only one line, "I'm McCreek." But this clearly isn't an issue that can be boiled down to poor writing decisions, since the author is Sor Snig himself, and as we all know, Sor Snig is the last person to make a foolish decision when writing a story. So McCreek has to be relevant to the story in some way, and I think I've cracked the code. You see, McCreek appears just after Fry Teddy Fansneer is killed, and leaves when our protagonist mentions that they were the one who first shot him. Once McCreek leaves, the Spaller shows up and announces herself to the main cast. I think this has a clear implication. That McCreek is a friend of the late Phility Fenderbender who sent the Spaller to test our protagonist group and give them one last chance. Obviously, since the Spaller got shot, they failed the test. But what could McCreek possibly do about that? Why would he test the group if he didn't have a way of reprimanding them if they failed? Well, that's just the thing, he did reprimand them because McCreek is the one who put our protagonist in the bad place. As our main character is about to be executed, McCreek feels that the punishment is unfit and decides to perform vigilante justice by making them reflect on the way they lived their life before he destroys this fallen world for good. So, if Connie represents greed, Flippy represents helplessness, and our protagonist represents hysteria, what does McCreek represent? Well, I think this is fairly obvious. McCreek represents
God. After the world was fallen to chaos,
I am the first strike from the last hand. I am the next to come. I was dead, and behold, I am alive for ages and ever, and I hope to not be of death. I am the first, I am the living, and look, I was dead, and behold, I am alive from death, and age to fall, keys of death, even ravaged to Vegas, famine, plagues, and the wiles and severe, the Almighty. He who has ever stricken children with dead, and then all churches to him he who lies the ivory and scepter of make days, and also gives me the and therefore the Almighty, this fucking bitch Connie.
Among Us.